But anyway, we of course grew up on the farm there, and about the time that I was starting to school, my mother became ill, and she was gone until I was in the 8th grade. I went to country school, and we had the 8 grades with one teacher. And my first grade teacher, and I started school when I was 5 years old, which was quite young, which I shouldn't have done, you know, but that's what they did. And my teacher was Mary Brown. And then in the second grade, my teacher was Eva Zachary, and she was my teacher through the next 7 years of my grade school. And with my mother gone, she was just like a mother to me, and she was a wonderful, wonderful person, and so many things that she taught us, you know, I retain and are still really some things that I lean on even after all the years of elapsed since my graduation. And I saw her here about 3 years ago, and she was 9 years old. Really? And we had a reunion. Much of the old classmates, many of the classmates were there, and she was just as sharp. And I had to tell you the good and bad about me. This had to be one of the good things. When I was a senior in high school, or in grade school, I should say, in 8th grade actually, they gave you a county-wide test, and I came out #1 in the county with my grade average. And it didn't seem like that big a deal as far as I was concerned, but she'd always remind me how that made her feel so good, because she said, I knew that I had to teach well in order for you to do that well.
So it reflected on her?
So it reflected on her. She always reminded me of that.
Did she mention that?
Oh, absolutely. Last time I saw her before she died. And the last time Bill and I were down there just a couple years ago in nursing home, we visited her. Just the greatest person you could possibly ever. And I was privileged to have her as my grade school teacher for those 7 years. And to go to school now, we had to go 1.5 miles. We walked most of the time, although Dad did. We had a pony, a little Shetland pony, Old Dick we called him, and Dad built a shed over at the school where we'd tie him up and feed him hay, you know, while we were in school over there. And every time he could, he'd rub off his halter, and when he did, he would head for home, and we'd get to walk home.
Yeah.
He didn't think that
Didn't want any part of
to school. He didn't think it was all that great. But going to grade school, you know, with all your neighbors' kids and everything, it was quite a great experience. And you had only like 12 or 15 students. You had all 8 grades in one room. So you can imagine, Mark, what that would be like if during your 8 grades of your first 8 grades of your schooling, you had it all in one single room with one teacher, with all the other grades in that school with you. But it was, you know, you developed a relationship with those kids when you're growing up that are lifetime lasting friendships and associations you had. We always had big Christmas parties, and they'd have box suppers, and it was, you know, the church and your school were your social centers, and that's where most of your activities took place like that.
And you had chores to do when you came
And then
home.
when we'd have like a break for Thanksgiving, I'd have to go home and shuck corn. The 2 days, you know, Thursday and Friday, you'd be off for Thanksgiving Day, and the Friday following, I'd have to shuck corn. Or you know, on Sundays when all the other kids after a baseball game or something like that, why they were afraid to go have fun and do things like that. I'd have to go home and milk cows and that sort of thing. So we had chores to do. I'd get up early in the morning, and I was a middle child of 3. So, you know, the first child is the one that they're happy to have the first one. Then the second one is there. Then they have the third one, which is a baby. And the middle one, I don't know, they're just happy to be there. It's a tough place to be. And Brother Bill was always the baby of the family, and I had to do all the dirty work, see, because you didn't want to have the baby of the family, have to do that sort of thing. So it went to old Myra Augustus. But anyway, we were poor, things were tough, and like I say, my mother was gone most of the time. We had a lot of ladies that would come in and look after us kids while Dad did the farm work, and but we have wonderful memories. I've told this many times, I'm going to tell it again though, about we 3 kids were in the house One time while Dad was getting dark toward evening, and Dad was down at the barn doing the chores, and my sister decided she'd tell us some ghost stories. So she told us this one which really was frightening to Bill and I, and all of a sudden we were so scared we were going to take off and go down where Dad was at the barn, and so here we were running down the barn, and we looked up and here Mary, she passed us on the way down, and she got more scared of the joke than we were. I never will forget that. But, yeah, on the farm, we had so many things happen to us, so many, terrible things. You know, you're involved in so many things, but Bill was going up from the barn to the house, and I was down there, we had a little tool shed, and I thought, well, I just kind of give old Bill a little surprise. There was a big steel nut that was really large, maybe it was 1.5 inches square. It was a really huge one. And I just thought I'd throw it up over the tree and, you know, like I say, give him a little scare. And all of a sudden I heard old Bill scream and yell, and I didn't want to scare him. I hit him right on top of the head, but yeah, I thought he killed him. Then from there, in 1934, I went to Mountain City High School, MCHS, where I was a freshman. And my major there was, being a farm boy, was agriculture. I spent half my time learning how to be a better farmer, and after I graduated, well, I left and went off to find my fortunes in the big city, so it really didn't do me much good. But, and I was very active in everything I could be in school, and all the athletics, football, basketball, track, and I was active in Legion baseball, and I'd have to walk or ride a bicycle 3.5 miles or in the town, you know, all hours of day and night, in order to take a bus or practice or whatever was connected with all that. And on the way back and forth many times at 10 or 11 o'clock in the pitch of dark at night, I'd come home and I had to go by the cemetery, Mount Hope Cemetery. You can't imagine how fast I moved. I never will forget that.
Tell the story about.
But you know, on the farm, I fell off of a horse on a barbed wire fence and cut my face all up, and I fell back in a sheep barn, and I got a great big scar on my arm where I hooked it on a nail down there. And I was sitting on a cistern one time, and I slid off the cistern, and I caught myself in a very private, personal part of my anatomy. And I will tell you more particulars about that off the video. I don't want to.
I think that's good. We would prefer to go else.
But you know, I should go back though and tell you the same doctor that did all these things to sew me up and whatever there was necessary with all these accidents I had was also my attending physician, and his name was Dr. F.E. Hogan. I'll never forget this gentleman. Now that would, you know, I first, well, in 1921, see, when I first encountered this doctor. But anyway, in high school, it was just a great experience for me. I had so much fun. I was active in everything I could be in. I won the state. This will surprise you guys. I was the champion livestock judge at the Northwest Missouri State College livestock judging contest. That would have been in 1938, and I was judging, dairy cattle and beef cattle and hogs, and I was very active in vocational ag, and we'd go to Kansas City to the American Royal Downer and show our hogs or whatever it was that we had as projects that we had in high school, or the show in Kansas City as a project, see, in connection with vocational agriculture. But anyway, I played football, and I was a quarterback, you know, and football, and I was better at football because, you know, I was kind of rough and tough, but basketball, I never really could handle the ball that well. I just was not a good ball handler. I'm just tall, and because, you know, I was 6'2" when I was in high school, so in those days, you were 6'2", you were a big guy. I was probably the tallest guy really on the squad at that time. And in track, why, I threw the shot put and the discus and a few things like that. But baseball was really my forte, and I played a lot of Legion ball, and I played semi-pro ball in St. Joe, Missouri, down with the White Eagles in St. Joe, Missouri. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of time for, you know, I guess the normal fun activities that maybe kids today might have, because we were so busy trying to survive. You know, we had to chop wood. We didn't have electricity all the time. I was on the farm. That was for 20 years. We never had electricity in our house.
How about plumbing?
We had an outside John, and you know, it was quite an experience too. And we just didn't have any of the luxuries that you kids enjoy. And we would take a bath once a week, and to do that now, we had to heat the water in a deal on they had one of these old sidearm things on a stove. I forget what you call it. It was a reservoir. And then you had a great big tub, and you'd put the tub right in front of the big old stove. You'd open the door on the stove so that you'd have plenty of heat to keep you warm. And you'd take that water, and you'd take a bath once a week whether you need it or not. See? But that's the way you did. And we would have to chop wood, and you'd have to fire the stove, or if you wanted to cook a meal, you had to cook it with wood that you'd chopped and hauled in and stoked the stove with, and what have you that way. But anyway, that was just part of growing up at Mound City, Missouri. One other thing, though, that was really a tremendous thing that we experienced down there was the snow in the wintertime. We lived out in the country where there was roads, there was no maintenance or no snow blowers or snow equipment or anything like that. When you had a big snow and you wanted to get out, you had to take a scoop shovel and go over and scoop the road out. We'd scoop out a half a mile of that road now, and you can't imagine now how, you know, how much scooping. That's what you'd have to do.
You didn't have a snow blower then?
Well, no. Oh, and you know, well, while I was on the farm, we started out, we were farming with horses, and the tractor came on the scene, you know, and boy, though, it was a great thing for me to be able to drive a team of horses. When you had it stretched out, you had 3 horses up in the tandem up front, and behind them 2 horses. And you know, when you had to hold the lines, and you were in control of 5 horses out there, and you could swing them all around the corner and keep them from tangling up and everything. It was quite an accomplishment. You know, it made you feel real great. And it was, we were very poor, as I said earlier, but we didn't know we were poor because we ate well, and we had to be close and look after each other, because if we didn't, we couldn't have survived. It was just a matter almost of survival that you did things like that. And you know, when our mother was sick, now here's another thing, it just was a difficult thing for us kids when we were growing up. See, when our mother, she had a nervous breakdown when Bill was born, actually, was what was her main problem. And she was in what they call number 2 in St. Joe, Missouri, down there, the state hospital. And Dad would religiously take we 3 kids out to see her at least once a month, and we would go in there. You know, it was just something else you just will never forget, because she was in a gown, her hair was just perfectly straight. You know, there was no care at all. She didn't have any teeth. And all she wanted to do was my children, you know, and just, wow. Oh, it was just.
But he did that month after month after month?
We did that.
Yeah.
All those years, we did that, yeah. So, and then, you know, Mom was, she was very religious, and she did make a tremendous recovery, and I think if they had had the drugs and everything in those days that they have available now, she probably never even gone there. But
she would have.
And you know, if you ever saw a person, even though it was difficult for her because of her strong beliefs, and her beliefs were only what she perceived, and she didn't think there was any but her belief, because if there was right one and that was hers, well, that was the only one you should think about, you know. But anyway, I want to go back to my growing up. Like you said, my mother was sick for many years, and our dad was just a tremendous person to keep us together, and it's kind of tough for me to talk about him.
Oh, he's a great guy.
But I just don't know how he did it, and it was during the Depression, and a lot of people were.
Yeah,
I wish I'd met him.
Oh, he was a
I
wonderful,
didn't get a chance
he was
to
a
meet
wonderful guy. We would sit, and he was a tremendous St. Louis Cardinal fan,
He was.
and we would sit, when I was down there in the summers, we would sit there and listen to Harry Carey, and
Well, I'll tell you, when baseball season was on, he listened to every single St. Louis Cardinal baseball game, and
Really? That was his
absolutely,
thing? Yeah.
he really did. But he was really a strong person, and I, like I say, he had to be in order to keep us together, because most farmers were losing their farms. But Dad was such a hard worker and a dedicated person. He just made up for everything else by
he was
putting his shoulders
strong
on
as an ox.
He really.
Both physically and
The relatives wanted to take your kids, and you'd have no part of it.
Yeah, Lee Stevenson, Lee and Allie, they wanted to adopt me, you know.
Huh.
But Dad kept us together.
So he'd go into town on Saturdays too, wouldn't he?
Well, he loved to go in there. It was it was a funny thing. Dad was so straight-laced and everything, and of course Mom was gone and everything, but I'd see him walk down the street, or I'd see him, he'd go in the pool hall actually to get a beer, and I didn't know he'd even ever drink a beer or anything. And then the first thing I know, here he'd be strutting down the street and have a big cigar. It was a whole different person that I knew. You know, you just didn't